Hello, Elena Rose Davis here. Welcome to the Embrace the Serpent podcast, where we have skin-shedding conversations about all of the things that are taboo in the shadows and juicy. And today is a new moon in Scorpio, and so of course I've invited the mystical, the magical astrologer, artiste extraordinaire, Adrianne Tamar Arachne, to join me on an episode where we're going to be diving deep into the mystical world of medicine. Adrianne Tamar Arachne, would you like to share just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you for inviting me on the show. It's my pleasure to be here, and for that lovely, generous introduction. So I've been studying astrology since I was 14, and I am now 32, so it's been over half my life. So I regularly give intuitive astrology readings, and I'm also a visionary fantasy artist. I tend to tap into the ethereal realms and to pull bioluminescent creatures and magical landscapes out from the other dimensions, and I do what I like to call soul portraits of people, where I tap into their shamanic spirits and I create images of what I find there. So I'm definitely always kind of working in other realms.
Yes.
Very strange.
Her art is otherworldly, cosmic. Yeah.
Thank you. And
That already sparks a question for me, actually. I want to know, when you were younger, did you use psychedelics to influence or inspire your art at all?
So no, actually, it took a long time for me to get to the point in my journey where entheogenic plant medicines or any altered states of consciousness actually influenced my art. Because I was raised in a pretty repressive Christian environment growing up. I just didn't, and even beyond that, it's not even just the fact that I was religious. My curiosity just did not lead me to altered states until later on in life. And I went to art school at the age of 22, and I had been making really imaginative fantasy art all through my teens. Like, I really was that kid, like, on RPGs on Windows 1998, like, typing up worlds with other nerds on the internet, and everyone thought I was, like, I was always a weirdo, but...
The best people are.
Right, totally. So that was always happening, but my journey didn't weave to the point of where I worked with those medicines till later on. But I went to art school in San Francisco around the age of 22, and I wanted to do concept art for film, which was the original plan.
Okay.
I wanted to work for DreamWorks or for Disney or for Pixar. And about 2.5 years into art school, I actually had to drop out because it was just so expensive. And at that point, I had a contact at LucasArts, and I contacted her, set up an interview with her, and we talked about the potential of me working there, which is the thing that I thought that I wanted since I was 16. And when we had that interview, I realized I didn't want to sit in the chair drawing other people's robots all day. Like, whatever it was inside me that wanted to bring another world to life, it wasn't about anybody else's world other than this spiritual place that I was finding. And then, like, fast forward to the time that plant medicines found my life, which is around the age of 26, suddenly everything came together, because I'm like, I've always been a storyteller, and I've always wanted to make art of these other worlds. I just needed, like, an altered state to fully expand that potential within me, and then the story came together. Yeah.
So you didn't use mushrooms or acid or anything?
Oh God, nothing.
That stuff?
No, the first time I sat in a ceremony, I had never even been high on weed.
Wow.
Like, I had never been drunk. I had never done anything.
Wow. So you've never really used, or have you, psychedelics in a recreational way?
I wouldn't say never. From the age of 26 onward, and definitely through my Saturn return, actually like 26, 27, 28, were all a period of heavy experimentation, and yeah, some recreational usage of things came into play. Like acid was actually really influential in me initiating a whole new body of artwork from anything I had done before.
Wow. So then at that point, saw the merging of your natural, highly imaginative, highly cosmic, artistic mind that's already there naturally for you, merging with the plant medicines and the psychedelics?
Yeah, this is an interesting subject in that I feel strongly in the case of my own story, and I can't speak for anyone else and what their experience is, but I feel really strongly like there was a breaking through of like my sort of linear limitations on where my creativity could go. I feel like there was a breakthrough that was only possible in an altered state of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you look back to all forms of creatives through history who have broken barriers, like they've made neural network jumps in their brains that they couldn't have made otherwise without an altered state. I mean, we look at Apple, we look at Microsoft, we look at all of these times in history that massive technologies have been developed, and it seems like an altered state has a pretty profound effect on a person's ability to just suddenly conceive of something way bigger than what they were previously imagining. And that's not to say that it's necessary, and altered states can happen in lots of different ways, but that's definitely been my personal experience.
I feel like this conversation is actually naturally moving towards speaking about altered states in general, as opposed to speaking only about plant medicine and its usage, which I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because for me, my journey is very different than yours. I started doing psychedelics when I was 15 years old. And I was 15 the first time I did ecstasy, and the first time that I did mushrooms, and the first time that I did acid. And I went, pew, and I think we're gonna weave astrology into this conversation. I think you've told me that during my teen years I had a strong Plutonian thing going on, right? And do you want to share for a second about the Pluto relationship with psychedelics or plant medicine?
Right,
in layman's terms, as much as we can, for those of us that are not as big as astrology nerds or experts.
I know, that was my hesitation. I'm like, reduce, distill.
What is Pluto? Talk about that.
So Pluto itself is an outer planet, and it's often what we would call a catalyst. It's definitely a catalyst planet on the deepest soul layers of both collective consciousness and the individual people that make up collective consciousness. It's the ruler of Scorpio. It's a planet that often walks us through just the deepest, most intense experiences that bring up sex, death, power, definitely in our lives. It definitely walks us through in a way, a Pluto transit is like an altered state in that we tend to go somewhere we would not have gone otherwise had we not been forced down that road. So you already have a very Plutonian chart in that you have heavy Scorpio in your chart, right? You're like Sun, Mercury, Venus, Pluto.
Yes.
All in Scorpio. So you very early on would have been born with Pluto in Scorpio, and all those personal planets in Scorpio would have had Pluto transiting over your planets, meaning for the layman, it would have been a really intense, catalyzed time in your life where you would have been drawing to you all the medicines in every realm that would have been walking you through your deepest fears, walking you through transformation.
It was a rough teen years. Yeah, I was like a bad episode of Teen Mom. Just really grew up in Orlando. I think that says enough to many. I always know when I meet a fellow Floridian because of some of they share a few dark experiences from their teen years, and I'm like, you're from Florida, aren't you? It's just a lot of drugs there. A lot of drugs and a lot of violence, and just the consciousness, the collective consciousness of the people that gather there. I hope I'm not insulting anyone. I'm from there, and I grew up there for 21 years. So I feel like I get to say that from my own experience. I started using psychedelics really young, and also my parents being hippies, and they have used psychedelics quite a bit when they were younger. They were kind of okay with it.
So, if I can ask you a question,
yes,
when you, at that age, when you were, I mean, at such a developmental age, when you were going into the other dimensions, and for all intents and purposes at that time in your life, it was probably just an escape, right? Just another place to go. Were you even then, like, experiencing some connection with the divine, or like a consciousness outside of yourself, or was it just kind of a party drug escape experience?
The first time I ever did mushrooms, I remember communing with a plant,
Gotcha.
with a bush, this green bush, and the leaves and the plant was moving, and I was, communicating with it on a different level. I loved day tripping and going outside. In Florida, we would just pick the shrooms right out of the cow shit. So we'd go at night,
Wow.
and we would go shroom it. And we'd go and in the cow fields, and we'd pick the shrooms out of the shit, and then we'd get trash bags full of shrooms. And then we would take them as we were washing them off and eating them, and we, would start tripping in the morning. And so I loved to trip during the day and to be outside. So nature is the divine. So yes, on some level, I was absolutely connecting with the divine, with Source, with the Great Mother, with Gaia, with Pachamama, all the things. Also, stuff was pretty. And I liked the way it looked. Clouds were moving. So, I wasn't super hyper aware of what I was doing, but I was having an experience. Ecstasy, of course, is very heart-opening. MDMA is very heart-opening. It was created by doctors, by psychotherapists and psychologists to use in trauma therapy. Mm-hmm. And it is still used to that day. It's not legally used in that way, unfortunately, but it has its usage in that. But it was a party drug for me. However, what I really loved about it was the intimacy that created between me and others. And I would cry and open up, and so yeah, there was some level there of me using it to go deeper. But I wasn't super aware of that, and certainly the people I was around weren't using it for that. Really were using it to escape, to get fucked up. But I was always a naturally very deep, sensitive, emotional person. And my parents made sure, because they were into psychedelics, that there was some layer of that. So if I was tripping and I was around them, they would make me talk to them about deep stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget that my dad, when I was tripping on acid when I was 16, took off his glasses and looked me in the eye, Scorpio moon, all deep, and he looked at me and said, the meaning of life is to see God in everyone. Mm-hmm. And it just stuck with me so deeply, because it's so true. And it's never stopped being true, and it's only become truer the further that I've gone in my life. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there was an element of depth thanks to my parents. They really used psychedelics in the 60s really to expand their consciousness. Right. It wasn't a partying thing. I think there was an element to that, but it was more so that time and the beings that were there at that time that were really, collectively gathering around psychedelics. It was a certain vibration to that.
Well, the astrology in the late 60s was really conducive to quick and sudden awakening of consciousness. Mm. That's when we had that Uranus-Pluto conjunction. There was just a lot of lightning bolts going off in the collective, and suddenly room for exploration, because, in the generations prior to that, it was all survival, right? It was getting through wars, getting through the Depression. Yes. It was, we don't have time to explore in the other realms, we just got to worry about surviving. And, the people growing up in the 60s and the people sort of coming of age in the 60s were kind of, it's like this time where suddenly this generation can actually explore a little bit, and like all of both the societal, the environmental circumstances were just so that, obviously your parents reaped the benefit of some of that.
Yes.
And there was the pitfalls of that time as well.
Yeah.
It got dark.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And it always can.
Of course.
It always can. you know, I mean, no. And getting back to the altered state thing in and of itself, you know, we could argue that there is growth and development and understanding that is only possible in an altered state. And yet I would say an altered state without intention and without a container and without a well-held container can just as easily turn from a dream into a nightmare. And probably most people watching have some kind of experience with that. I know I have my own experiences with that.
Yeah. We both do.
Yeah, right. We've both taken a trip down the dark side of Neptune Lane for sure.
Yeah.
Right, but it's what's interesting, and in the current shamanic training that I'm in, one of the things that my teacher Christina says is that altered states used to be considered in indigenous cultures to be a necessary part of being an adult. It was journeying into an altered state. You know, whether it was induced by plant medicine or not, or it was chance, or it was meditation, whatever it was, in indigenous cultures there's ways in which that was considered for hundreds of thousands of years. That was considered an important part of actually being a responsible adult, was entering an altered state with an intention, and then coming out the other side with your answer or your expansion, your understanding of what it is you're supposed to do from that point.
Oh my gosh, there's so many things, so many directions that I can go right now from just what we're talking about. It's crazy. I mean, one of the things that we're definitely going to touch on today is altered states without external medicine. But
Sure.
Before we get into that, I really want to go back to the 60s. It was a certain time, astrologically, there were certain influences, and that was influencing the collective to experiment with psychedelics. The psychedelics that were prominent at that time were LSD, mushrooms, and now we're also in a very potent time energetically. There is a rising in consciousness. I can feel it, you can feel it. People that are tapped in are definitely aware. I think there's an overall collective knowing that 2020 is going to be a massive year. It's the end of a decade. And plant medicine, and in our time, what I'm talking about is mushrooms still. They're making a full kind of circuit comeback situation right now with legalization. But ayahuasca, peyote, San Pedro, these plant medicines that are now gaining a lot of popularity. I want to speak to that. I want to speak to what's going on now that is suddenly really gaining momentum in that world, and what's going on with that, what your feeling is.
Yeah, I mean, I have like feelings on several different levels. Like there's the astrologer in me who's like, oh well, we're the Pluto and Scorpio generation coming of age, and you know, like people born from 1983 through 1995-ish, we all have Pluto and Scorpio. We're deep diggers. We want to see what's possible in our consciousness by exploring everything that we can in the deepest possible way. And that I would say is a collective consciousness thing of our generation. Like, and not all of us will do it, but
it ain't easy,
right? Well,
it don't always feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's scary, right? It takes that warrior courage to choose to go in, you know.
Yeah.
And also I would say specifically your year and my year that we were born, there's the Saturn and the Uranus and Sagittarius. Sagittarius has a lot to do with exploration, religion, belief,
Yes.
going out there.
Yeah.
You know, going into an altered state is a Sagittarian concern, you know.
Traveling is absolutely taking you into an altered
you're
reality,
traveling.
altered
Right.
state.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, those are my or a few astrological speculations on the times, and but beyond that, I think for a lot of people, right around the years 2012 and 2013, there seemed to be this just massive wave that hit the collective consciousness.
Yes.
I think a lot of people who were kind of sensitive felt it. And there's been lots of explanations offered on why that is, whether you're a follower of the Mayan calendar and the Mayan calendar ending, or there's tons of books written by different people on different theories on why that is, and whichever one you choose to ascribe to is fine. But it does seem like that is when this tipping point happened, and there was kind of a breaking off from this old Iron Age thinking, this way that we were looking at work and consciousness and what was required of us and what the workday needed to look like. And it seemed like they're like the direction of consciousness development from that point was more in the direction of curiosity. It was more in the direction of exploration, and it was more in the direction of, holy shit, we are souls and spirits, not just lemmings and minions who are like meant to pay the bills and die. You know, and there's been people throughout generations waking up in different ways throughout history from whatever Iron Age is happening at the time, right? You know, and altered states of some kind are probably responsible for a lot of that whenever those triggers happen. But this 2012, 2013 thing, that's right when it found me. Like, I was right at a tipping point of consciousness that felt like I was on the crest of the collective wave that was happening, and I didn't even know it. And then there was some inner opening, and I like tripped into it, and then it was like, oh wow, it was like a whole paradigm shift. And then I felt that softening happening around me, and it was suddenly in tribe, it was suddenly in communities around me, and even in people who weren't super conscious of it, you could detect a bit of that zeitgeist shift amongst everyone. And now, you know, it seems like there's still some people really resisting that shift and that opening. It's almost like they're trudging upstream, right? Like we see them, especially some of like the baby boomers and the older baby boomer generation who haven't quite fully accepted the shift. They're exhausted, you know? And not to peg everything on that generation, especially as a millennial, like I don't want to further add into that dialogue. I feel like it's kind of a useless, like blame the boomers, blame the millennials. I don't think it's helping anyone. But really just to speak to anyone resisting that flow into the new zeitgeist and into the new paradigm, they're exhausted at this point. We're just not about the Iron Age anymore, it's the Golden Age now. Now we're integrating all kinds of different schools of understandings, of thoughts. We're drawing from wisdoms that have been planted in the indigenous soul for generations. We're craving the reintegration of the indigenous soul, and that's why so many people are going to the plant medicines right now. They're wanting that reconnection to the wisdom of the earth with the age of information and knowledge and science. And the potentials there of those two meeting and knowing each other like lovers are immense. You know, and there's pitfalls, which I know we're going to get into, but that in and of itself is such exciting frontier territory to me.
How do you think we can, because now, like, I think about, like, the tech people from San Francisco, like, going to Burning Man and having their like everything ready for them, and they don't actually bring any of their own costumes or any of their own shit, and they just show up and they just like do the like, you know, pre-made packaged like $1 million Burning Man experience, and it's just like totally against what the whole intention of what Burning Man was created for, which was coming together and co-creation and like building and breaking down together as one, and coming and just paying for your shit to already be set up for you, showing up, taking, consuming, being hedonistic, and then just piecing out in a freaking helicopter from the site. It's just all of it is just a little bit, I think about it with plant medicine and like those same people going to Peru and getting their shaman situation, you know, paid for and pre-packaged and consuming and taking from the indigenous and taking from the land and not showing up and offering anything, and it becoming this about money. There's a lot of stuff going on that I've heard about where there's some you know, not really integral retreat centers and stuff like that are offering, and they're targeting those people, and they're charging a bunch of money, and they're making it sexy. Like plant medicine ceremony isn't really meant to be a sexy experience. It's not like a quick, a quick thing, a quick fix.
Right.
It's almost like it's like a thing to check off their list, just like Burning Man. I went to Burning Man.
Yeah.
I did plant medicine. Check, check, check.
Right.
I'm cool. I'm in the club.
Right.
But it's not a fucking club. It's an initiation. It's an initiation that, like you said, was used to help you evolve into your highest potential as a woman, as a man, as a grown, evolved being.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to go through the fire.
Right.
And you had to get ugly, and you had to get raw.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to respect it, and you had to honor it. And there are certain sacred rituals that are associated with it to really be in alignment with what the full intention, integrity is in it.
Right, yes. Yeah, and there's so much juice packed into everything you just said. I'm like, this splits off into a lot of, and really this splits off into a lot of necessary, like if we're gonna have this conversation, the plant medicine conversation, everything you brought up is a really important part of the complexity of this conversation. Like we haven't quite veered into, and it feels like we're kind of veering into cultural appropriation, right? Mm-hmm. Especially with the indigenous cultural rituals that accompany these medicines. And the medicines themselves and the cultures that they're often ritualized in, they're two separate things. Like someone out there could go run into a peyote, have no association with any culture, consume that plant, and something could be born. That person isn't appropriating that peyote if they're, because they haven't learned anybody's ceremony.
Right.
But when we sit in an indigenous ceremony, if we don't have the right initiation and invitation, there's a huge conversation around appropriation there. Respect, definitely something you just brought up, right? Respect and intention, container. And then commodification. Yeah, absolutely. You brought up commodification and everything you're talking about. And, the fact is these medicines in and of themselves, their character, the plant spirit within ayahuasca, within peyote, within San Pedro, they're kind of like water in that they'll contain whatever it is that we are. They're kind of amoral. Are they helpful? Yes, they're very helpful, but you have to walk in with an aligned intention and know what it is that you are going after in that space. Because if you just come with all of your selfish dirt and with your greed and you're gonna just use that container to pull people in and sell the next big trip, right? There's people who are going to buy that. You will have the millionaires who are looking for the next experience or the next big thing, and they will come pay someone to give them just that, and maybe they'll get their light show and that's enough for them and they'll leave. Like there are those people. And then there's the millionaire who's genuinely looking for something beyond having it all.
Yes.
And there's that person who shows up too. So it's hard to put a blanket statement over who has the right intention and who doesn't. Because even at Burning Man, and Burning Man is an altered state.
Yes, it is.
Burning Man is an altered state.
100%.
The whole time
Oh yeah, it's the plant medicine ceremony. The whole
right.
I mean, festivals in general are altered states.
Right, yes, yeah. I would 100% agree with that. There absolutely is the experience of the person who they're like the fool card in the tarot. They step off the cliff and they have the awakening they need and the catalyst they need as a fool, as a person not planning anything. And suddenly they get it, whatever it is for them, and that's a super subjective experience for that person. I mean, that was my experience. I didn't know what the hell I was getting myself into, and there it was. And,
same.
Yeah.
Absolutely same.
Right, and for me, there's all kinds of clumsy parts of that experience because I wasn't prepared. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and once that medicine like reconnected all the neural nets in my brain and helped me access ways of thinking that would have been like jumping the Grand Canyon before I had ever altered my mind in that way. Once all of that happened, then there was the pitfall of stumbling over what is now correct for me, what is now moral for me, what is now right for me, and that was messy. I didn't have a lot of guidance in that process, and many people don't. if anyone watching this is desiring to engage in plant medicine or in a ceremony and just, you're feeling this raw, but you haven't found your place yet. Is there a place where we can put links on here? Yeah, we'll drop a few links of some trusted centers that people can get more information from, just because I would hate for anyone to have that experience. And luckily I don't know of too many, but I know of a few. And they're out there, there are the people out there who it's their karma to take advantage of people and to create violence out of something that is potentially very, very, very vulnerable and very deep and very penetrative.
Well, something that I know that this is a challenging thing for many people to wrap their mind around, but something that I'm always feeling into and has been shared with me in my spiritual path and studying in India, is that we've all been the killer and the victim. So have compassion for it all.
Yeah.
Find the compassion. I know it's hard.
Well, and this leads into yet another complexity, and like this conversation is full of mirrors and shadow light, and they're all like there's so many paths in this conversation in order to have it well. Where we see, there's a lot of mirrors and a lot of black mirrors. I mean, if you go deep enough with plant medicine, you will absolutely see right away you are exactly what you hate in the world. The shadow reflection of everything that you detest and despise and everything that's violent. It's here. It's within you. The illusion of separation is an illusion. Yes, and. There's a lot of yes, and in this conversation.
Yes.
Because...
It's not a but, it's a yes, and.
Because, there's people out there taking advantage of people and doing horrible, violent things. And that's me. Some part of that is within me, because there's no separation between any of us. And when that is healed in me, then I can have compassion for that. Then that healing begins to spread through the world. And there's a lot of us here doing that work and using altered states in order to help us do that work deeper. And that's a great intention to have, to get back to what you said at the beginning, to see God in everybody.
It's like I said, it was the most profound thing that my dad has ever said to me. My dad is my first guru. And it's continued, that one statement that was said to me while I was on psychedelics, and I was 16, and I kind of like, Dad, get out of my face, you're so weird. It's just continued to, just the layers to that.
Yeah.
And it's like, really see God in everyone. Everyone?
Yeah, the tropes of the world, the Stalins of the world,
Hitler.
the Hitler, these are all really dramatic examples, but, the ex you hate, the, your abusive parent, and it's, this also kind of snakes into the
serpents. It's serpents.
We're embracing the serpent.
As we do.
As we do. It's good. It's appropriately named. It's awesome. I love it.
Yes.
There within the culture surrounding plant medicine and within the culture surrounding practices of altered states generally, I think there's a really fine balance here in that some people have this awakening. Some people don't even have it on plant medicine. It's like through meditation, right? Or through whatever practice they're doing, where they kind of get above the weather, so to speak, right? They kind of see it all. They see beyond the illusion of separation. They see beyond that person's bad, this person's good. They get beyond all of that, and they kind of get it's all one. And they bring that back, and then, it's like, if that's not integrated with the rest of reality, you can have a bunch of those people sitting in a ceremony with someone, and the one person who's actually not quite there yet, and in a world of a lot of hurt, and you can get a bit of this blame the victim thing going on, where that person isn't being met. Everyone feels like they're spiritually bypassing that other person's very real experience, and I've seen that happen to a few people in ceremonies, where they're there's this loss of humanity if you get so far beyond and get kind of stuck in the altered state to the point where there's no compassion for the human experience in that very real level, for the people who actually just need to be met and grieved with and met on a human platform.
That topic is a whole nother podcast because I am deep in sanghas, spiritual communities, love them, experience a lot of that spiritual bypassing,
Right.
and have felt a lot of shame for being in a lower state of consciousness, or to experience the fluctuations as I'm evolving, and to feel like those around me in some of my situations and in some of my sanghas are judging me and are just kind of casting me aside, and like kind of they take that seat, that cosmic seat of, I'm indifferent to your experience and to you. I'm above it and you're there. Goodbye. Good luck. And that does not feel good. And I have to admit that, so my experience with plant medicine has been, obviously I had my teen years where I did lots of drugs and lots of psychedelics, lots of altered states. But then I didn't ever really do it in a ceremonial way until way later on, until I was 29. In 2016, I did my first ayahuasca ceremony. And after that, literally a month later, I went traveling for months on the other side of the world, which of course like we talked about is altered states. So while I'm traveling and I'm exploring these beautiful places, I'm thinking, oh my God, I feel like I'm on plant medicine right now. Like I'm in the jungle and I feel so connected. I feel all the same things. Then I end up going to India, doing all these teacher trainings, going into deep meditations, into vipassanas, and just like blowing myself open without any drugs. And I also became sober, completely sober of all drugs and alcohol. So I did become kind of, I mean, it's hard for me to admit this, but I'm going to say it. I was judgmental of those that were really deep on the plant medicine path. And I felt like my path was better. I don't need anything outside of myself. And yes, I still believe that there's the power of going within yourself and accessing those altered states just through your breath and through movement and through meditation and these practices is extremely powerful, and it's extremely empowering because you don't need to take anything. And you're not reliant on anything outside of yourself. And I honor and respect the power of the plants. And just by kind of shifting away from and receiving that feeling from others, I didn't like that. And I thought, ooh, and I've been that way toward people that have been really heavy on the plant medicine path. I've been judgmental, and I've been sort of like I'm above and beyond it. And I don't like the way that feels when it's done to me, so I started to shift away from that and wanted to change that. And just by shifting that, another plant medicine ceremony that Adrianne and I recently partook in with San Pedro came into my life, just like that. And I just answered it. It was just a yes. I didn't think about it. You asked me like 2 days before the ceremony, and it was just a yes. And of course, all of the deep work that I've done with meditation and with all these practices served my experience. I felt so much more grounded. I felt my container, I felt contained in myself, and I felt like I was serving the collective, but I also allowed myself, I surrendered and allowed myself to be held by the collective that were there. And it was very humbling. It was gently humbling. You know, the plants meet you where you're at. And it was so positive for me, and I think it's important, as I'm a teacher of spiritual practices and I'm here to help raise the consciousness and here to contribute to the raising of consciousness, that I have this compassion and humanity for where we're all at on our paths. This is so important. I love this conversation. Like I said, I think it's a whole other continued podcast episode, spiritual bypassing. Watch out for it. It's gonna be on the next episode, another episode. Spiritual bypassing is something that I think that a lot of spiritual people actually do to themselves, and then it translates to being done to other people.
Yeah, 100%.
They're so concerned with being in the light and having a high vibration and being in a higher state of consciousness, that they don't allow themselves to drop into the darkness, to drop into the shadow, to experience the toxicity, the negative feelings and emotions. And so they spiritual bypass their own experience, which is the human experience, and then they do it to others. And so when, say, you're having a negative thought and you share it with another person, and that person says something that dismisses the validity of your feeling, and then they offer, that usually what they do is then they offer you the solution, and you don't feel good. You know when you're being spiritual bypassed because it doesn't feel good. You know when a friend is actually offering you like love and compassion, and they're actually there with you and they're hearing you, and they're like, man, what can I do to help you? And they suggest something to you from their heart, from compassion and from love for you. There's a difference in the way that feels.
Right.
Also, usually you've come to them and you've said, I'm hurting.
Yeah, can you help me?
Can you help me?
Right.
And then you're looking for them to respond. But then there's the time when you're just speaking about your experience of life or something, and there's someone usually there, you might not even know them well, and they say, I don't have these feelings, I don't have these thoughts because I meditate every day for 30 minutes a day, and maybe you should do that.
Or
do you meditate?
Or they say something like, oh, once it's all an illusion, you'll ascend beyond it. There's this sort of ascension consciousness that kind of, suggests this very disconnected, once you reach a certain level, you won't be feeling this anymore, honey. Mm-hmm. And I'd say the plant medicine community is rife with that. Lots of altered consciousness communities are rife with that. It's everywhere in the spiritual and consciousness communities. It is my very personal experience, and not everyone has to agree, but it's my very personal experience that we are not in our wholeness without being in deep relationship with parts of us that can be lost in the shadow. And if something is in the shadow and you disregard it, you just try to ascend beyond it, it actually has a lot of control over you. Whole lot of control over you. And I'm just saying that from personal experience in my life. The things that were in my shadow and things I'm still working on in my shadow. In the current protocol I'm following in my shamanic training, what we do is we go into the shadow and we retrieve those parts. And we do that by acknowledging them and loving them and being human. But the way you just described being compassionate to someone, if you're not treating the shadow parts of yourself and your very human nature with that love and compassion and acknowledgement, then it's going to be running the show. And this very much goes back to a plant medicine experience in that you can have a vision in an altered state where you've ascended beyond it all, and the plant medicine seems to be telling you, you're an ascended master God, you're a technology being here to enlighten the universe, and for all intents and purposes, some part of that might be true, but if you are already in a skewed state of ascension consciousness where you're not even going to be able to come out of that and actually really integrate that with the rest of reality and really still be human, which that's our job here, we're here to be human, then you're going to be way out of whack, and all this altered state did was serve to reinforce your ego lie about yourself. And that's where altered states can be dangerous without integration and with proper, with community. I'm realizing as I'm talking about this, the people that I know who've really gone off the deep end in plant medicines, they get more and more isolated because they get more and more special, and they're not relating with anyone anymore in community. They can't be human with people and share the things that make us human and interrelational with each other. They get farther and farther separated, more and more special. And that's a sign that plant medicines and whatever altered state you're in is not serving you. Because things that are actually healing us, their medicines, they help us be more human and more connected. And one thing I love about the particular ceremony we went to last week is that George Bertelstein's tradition is very centered in being human. And no one is here to be special. No one's here to ascend. We're just here to make a prayer for our lives. And that's all we're sitting in that altered state for, is we're asking, how does it get better than this? I want more love. I want more community. I want more. That's what we're there. We're saying thank you, and we're praying for more. And it's very humble, because it comes down to the bare bones of what we're all about. And plant medicine, altered state used in that container, that's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing, because it just helps us get deeper into the prayer of what it is to be a human and have a human life.
Yes, the humbling aspect of praying for more.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it comes back to, I've done all this work. I'm super grateful for everything that I have. I am amazing and I have an amazing life. And I've made sure of that because I've worked so hard for it. And I want more. And I need help.
Yeah.
So to show up and to be asked to say that prayer.
Right.
When in some times in my life and in some communities, in some spiritual communities, I felt like to even admit that I want more of something, that I need help with anything, is admitting that I am not enlightened enough. And when you are a teacher as well, there's also this idea, which is totally bullshit, and I think all real teachers know this, but that you're supposed to know everything and not have any flaws or any human moments. One of the reasons that I love my teacher in India, Anandji, is that he's this young spiritual teacher, spiritual master, Anand Mehrotra, who created Sattva Yoga Academy. He is young and he is a human, and he's brilliant.
Yeah.
And wise, and like an old, saint in some moments, and then also like a little child just giggling and being silly and just making fun of stuff. Sometimes he's in a bad mood and he needs his macchiato. He doesn't hide. He has nothing to hide.
Yeah.
And in his nothing to hideness, you see it all.
Yeah.
And there's so much wisdom in that. That's his greatness. His greatness is in his absolute transparency. Yeah, and he is on another level for sure. He has obviously, dedicated his life to raising his consciousness, to working with his energy, and he is an extremely alive presence. That to be in the presence of him is like you are in the presence of someone who is, his energy is very palpable. It's very, very strong. Like any great teacher, you can feel that. And but like I said, it's still rooted in this humanity is there.
Well, when I hear you tell his story, and then I think about the people I respect the most as teachers, and when I think about even the respect I have for these plants as teachers, I think one of the greatest gifts that altered states, and the work you're doing with him is obviously an altered state.
Absolutely.
Too. Yeah.
Cosmic consciousness for sure. Yes.
But I think the point of all this is nothing's actually wrong with us.
Yes.
We're not broken. We're not, if you're going to giggle and be a kid, cool, you're not broken. You're not worse than the ascended one, not giggling. If you're going to have a bad day, if you're going to fart, whatever you're going to do, you're please let it out. Just
let it go. Let it go on anything.
The point is and this is probably actually for me part of my plant medicines, which catalyzed a change in my life at such a huge degree, is I had been raised in the illusion of separation in my religion. That we were born into sin, and that something was fundamentally wrong with me, and that I needed to be saved, and that only Jesus could save me. And within my first ceremony, which thank God was in George Bertelstein's Medicine Path Church in Berkeley, the moment I sat with San Pedro and reached an altered state where I dropped out of my head and what I thought I knew into my heart, that was actually the most profound awakening. When I distill everything down to the thing that really changed my whole life, it was the sudden realization that happened like a lightning bolt in an altered state, where I was like, there's nothing wrong with me. I wasn't born broken. What's sin? There is no sin. There's just us all doing the best we can at every moment, the best that we know how. And for some of us, that's really shitty, but it's the best we know how. And that in and of itself, it's almost like it's hard for you to access that because you weren't raised religious, like that contrast, that different, I'm sure you can in other ways in your life with different changes you've gone through, but for someone who is caught in the illusion of separation, and ascension consciousness can be an illusion of separation too, right? Like all these people are better than me and I'm, none of it exists. It's all, this is the deal. The deal is we're here to be doing humanity. We're here to be doing the human thing. And that was huge for me. And I kind of don't respect teachers or shamans or people leading groups who have ascended out of that. I don't feel like it's actually that helpful.
Yeah. I definitely did not get raised with the religious dogma. However, I was labeled as a very difficult child and sent to therapy at a really young age and had epilepsy until I was 6. So I had all these things that were wrong with me on a mental level.
So you thought you were broken?
Oh,
in a different
yeah.
way.
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha.
I think that we all in some way have that story, and it's really propelled by society's idea of what we should be doing and what we should look like, and what our lives should be leading us towards. The white picket fence and the family and the lots of money and and now there's this whole other layer of the spiritual.
Right, like the influencer,
yeah.
Instagram influencer,
yes.
All of the sexy yoga pictures,
yes.
All of the, what's the bingo board? Like, what are the things?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and not hating on anyone who that's your story too, like, if you've managed to manifest success through that, awesome, but we're just talking about it as a trope.
Yeah, it's just that it creates a certain expectation that we can buy into. And a lot of us are susceptible to pressure.
Yeah.
And then looking at ourselves in the mirror and going, I'm not that. I don't look like that. I don't have that. Something's wrong with me. It has been, a major thing in my life to come to okayness with myself. Okayness with my intensity that I was born with. That intensity that bothered my parents and other adults, that made them say, maybe she has a mental problem. Maybe she needs some sort of medicine, pills or something, and that will help calm her down. That very thing is who I am and has made me a great leader, and is actually why people love me. It's my uniqueness. There's nothing wrong.
No,
nature loves diversity, and so we're not here to all be the same. We're all here to be diverse. That's why there's millions of different life forms on this planet. It's what makes the world colorful and vibrant. And there's also millions, well, maybe not millions, but there are many different ways to access altered states. And I've had to come to a place where I recognize and honor everyone's different journey. I think that some of my judgment came from meeting a lot of people within the culture that aren't respecting and are abusing and are not integrating. And I've seen and met and been close with a number of people who have been really fucked up from their experiences, or they've not integrated and they have no method of integrating, and they just keep going back to the plant medicine for it to fix, to help, and I don't see it working. So I want to speak to that. I think this will be healing for me to talk through this with you here on this podcast right now.
For sure.
Because, with my recent reintroduction to plant medicine and to have the experience that I had and to be in a group of all clearly really strong spirits, and the group was being led by really integral, beautiful people who were obviously clearly very experienced and
really centered,
well
held.
It was a different experience than my ayahuasca ceremony, and I feel like it was just a stronger container for me at this time. But I feel now I'm like still feeling like concerned for those that don't have the other practices and are reliant on this stuff. But I also feel like it is such a beautiful way to come together in spiritual community, do work together, heal together, and I see its value. So let's talk about that. A lot to unwrap. There's only a question there. I just want to.
Right. So, well, I guess I have another question for you. Like, what would you mind sharing a little bit more about your personal, like your ayahuasca ceremony specifically, and what you felt went well and didn't go well in that container, for example? I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to go that deep if you don't want.
Well, no, it's okay. Man. So I felt like the integration was not there, and I don't recall having the tools. I discovered the tools. Then after that, my life's purpose became discovering the tools, which I now realize. Thank you, grandmother.
Yeah.
Thank you for that harsh initiation into deepening my persistent pursuit of the tools that are necessary for me to not need someone else to love me, for me to feel worthy, and to love myself.
Right.
That was exactly the medicine that I needed.
Yeah, and we've talked about this extensively too, in that, and it seems that all the plant medicines kind of have their own personality. I label ayahuasca as Scorpio, just the deepest possible thing of the thing, or many things, whatever it is, because she's not above using trickster energy with people, and this is, I think, a common experience where I see people on one side or the other of this. I sometimes see people having had a really potent ayahuasca ceremony where they've sort of come about their interpretation of what they think a connection is about, or it might not even be a lover situation like your situation, but it could be, oh, she told me this is what's going to happen, this is what I'm going to do, this is the thing, and I know it. And then it ends up being kind of like ayahuasca leading them on the trickster rigmarole, where it's like, hey, this is me doing you the favor of showing you how you keep sabotaging your own life. And the gift of trickster energy is that it's a shortcut, right? It's typically kind of funny later on.
Oh, wow. That's so resonant. It did feel like a shortcut. Even at the time, I was like, I'm just meeting my soulmate right now?
Right.
And it's just instant, and he's like everything on the surface.
Oh, I've been on the trickster rigmarole, the trickster merry-go-round so many times. I'm so Pisces. I'm like, oh, the illusion, this is it. I found it, because similarly, with my ayahuasca ceremony, there was here's your soulmate, he's coming, he's going to do these things, he's going to be this ways. And guess what? I met that person last year. And it was extremely painful trickster lesson, where it was like, hey, this is your ability to imagine up something that you think is the thing, it's destined, but it's actually something you forged and created in your imagination that you think you need. Do you really? Here's the actualization of that. And she lets us do that work. She doesn't ascend us beyond that. She'll take us right into that. And that's enough to fuck a lot of people up. That fucked me up with my first ayahuasca experience for, God, like 2 years, you know? There's parts of those ceremonies I'm still integrating. And to say it's an extreme experience to work with that medicine is like an understatement. And I mean, to be honest, you know, it's like, yes, having counseling afterwards helps. Having tools helps. I mean, if you were to go do an ayahuasca ceremony now,
it'd be very different. Just like last weekend with the San Pedro. I know San Pedro was gentler.
Right.
But I mean, it was still very strong.
It was very strong.
I was like, it's so gentle. I was like, bleh. Just, you know, puking my brains out like gentle, yeah.
That was some of the stronger San Pedro I've ever drank, for sure. Yeah, it was very
But
strong.
it was still, I felt very differently.
Yeah.
I could really feel the merging of the worlds, of the work I've done outside of plant medicine, merging with plant medicine, creating a very different experience.
Right, totally. So having like an external helper, a counselor, thanks to the age that we're in, there are now people who specialize in plant medicine integration counseling. Mm-hmm. They can be found. They're out there. People in my personal network who are doing that work. It's a specific type of counseling because not every therapist you're going to go to is going to understand altered states.
Yeah.
But even if you don't have that, you know, like a plant medicine ceremony, to me, I just don't think it should be a substitute for your daily work that is like a grounding exercise, an altered state that isn't influenced by any kind of entheogenic substance. I mean, meditation and shamanic journeying. I do shamanic journeying every day. That's an altered state. I'm going into spirit world. I'm just not taking anything to do it. Qigong, Tai Chi, you know, these are all tools that should be going in conjunction with what you're doing. And once again, having a supportive community, if you're going to engage in plant medicines, it sounds to me from what you've explained in the past, that community was really fragmented and a little ragtag and people came together. It sounds like the container wasn't held, like really held. And when you sit in ceremony, like our ceremony last week where that container's held, not just by the people leading it, but by a legacy that has come down through generations that holds a container with a very strong particular intention towards healing in a very particular way. You know, that I think that really helps your experience along, and that helps with the integration process. And then there are people in that community equipped and trained. Like, you know, either of those people who led the ceremony, you could reach out to them for further counseling and help. That is super important. I know there are people out there who drink medicine on their own. I happen to personally know a few people who continue exploration that way, and that's big for them. There's lots of mixed feelings on that out there. I don't think it's right for everyone, but I'm also not inclined to argue with someone if they've really found that as their path. I get suspicious of anybody getting more and more isolated in an altered state and in their own world. I get a little suspicious of people getting farther and farther away from community and from supportive, helpful, integrative community. So those are kind of some of my thoughts on like containment, integration. And integration takes time.
Yes.
Interpretation takes time.
I think the rapidness has been the biggest concern when I've met people and they're like, I do these plant medicine ceremonies consecutive weekends in a row. I've done them, you know, 10, 20 times, 30 times this year. I mean, the one ayahuasca 3-day ceremony that I partook in 2016 has been a massive, I've just been in a massive integration period since then. And I've gone to 3 teacher trainings in India. I've gone to a Vipassana retreat and, you know, done so much of other things that traveling multiple different countries, you know, that have continued to expand my consciousness. And at every different cycle of that, within all the different cycles within that cycle, I've been able to learn more about what came through that plant medicine ceremony. It's still
so rich.
It is still I just keep going deeper and deeper and
Yeah.
deeper. And I remember when I was in my Vipassana, just dropping into these deep states of within my own psyche, and I was having these memories and I was having these experiences from childhood come up. It was exactly like an ayahuasca ceremony. So for me, as a person also that did abuse drugs as a young person, I think from my personal journey, and anyone out there, because I know a lot of people turn to plant medicine to help them with addiction.
Oh, right.
So I want to speak specifically to you.
Yeah.
Be careful of the addiction to using plant medicine. Because for me, it has been extremely powerful and empowering and helped me really stay strong in my sobriety to find that I could go into such a deep altered states and do really deep ancestral healing and all the things that people turn to plant medicine for, that I can do it completely sober.
Yeah.
Just by meditating. Albeit for, like 10 hours a day for 10 days in silence. I mean, I've had to go into deep states. Well, what is the difference? Does it seem to some, you think, that it's like quicker? It's like a quicker fix, really, to take plant medicine? Because I actually don't think it is. I think there's a misconception. There's an idea that, I'm taking something, and I'm done. It's easier. It's not actually easier when you look at it from that bird's eye, from that eagle vision, and you look at all of the paths, and you realize that nothing is, the time is an illusion, first of all, and then there is no quick fix. That this is a continued, never-ending, infinite unraveling and unfurling this life.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I would say, as a person who looks at life shamanically, which I do for a lot of my viewpoints, I'd say change itself can happen instantly in an altered state. Change itself happens in a moment. Integrating change in the rest of your reality and doing it well, that's practice, that's over time.
Yeah.
Like the lightning bolt. You got it.
Maintaining.
Right. And I mean, a change that happens that you don't integrate turns into a mess, It doesn't work, and then you got to clean up a bigger mess. So change that happens in an altered state, it happens fast. It can happen like a lightning bolt. Yeah, it has for me. But not knowing how to integrate that change not getting the direct real world instructions about how to integrate that change in my reality, that's what's created a mess. Sometimes where it's gotten messy. But so much of what we're saying, we seem to be saying in a roundabout way. You don't get to escape being human. You don't get to escape your work. Plant medicines won't take you out of your work. If anything, you go to a plant medicine to find more information about what your work is. I mean, you don't go there. If you're going to a plant medicine to alter your state and to escape something, good luck. I mean, some of these medicines will give you the light show. They meet you where you're at. But sometimes these medicines go, I'm not going to dance for you. I'm not your monkey. And I've heard of those journeys with people too, where they get the I'm not your monkey journey from ayahuasca, and it's a lot of pain, and then throwing the person out. Like, get on it. Do the work, there's that experience as well. And these are conscious spirits in these plants, and they know we're in trouble. They know we're barely doing this human thing most of the time, and we just need help, all of us. That's one of the best prayers. One of the quickest, simplest, easy prayers is just, I need help. And just listening to what that answer is, and then having the courage to apply it in your real daily life.
I also know some people who told me that who have a lot of experience or a significant amount of experience with plant medicine, is that they also got we're done.
We're done. Yes, that one too.
Yeah, I've heard that. We're no more.
Yeah.
And then when they go back to it, they're like, they said it's over.
Yeah.
So one of the things that my teacher says about plant medicine. He does speak to it because, of course, in satsangs, he gets asked about it a lot. And he speaks to, these practices will take you there. These are activating, these practices that I teach and that I've been taught and initiated into in the yogic and Vedic tradition. It's activating DMT.
Yeah,
it's activating serotonin and oxytocin.
Well, the largest concentration of DMT is in your lungs. Breath work can absolutely take you to some
And
place.
all of this pineal gland activation working with the third eye. I mean, it's right Kundalini and moving that energy. And so he speaks to that. He says that. But he also says plant medicine can serve you on your journey. Mm-hmm. But when you get the message, hang up the fucking phone. And he says, drugs can take you to the doorway, but they can't open it. Like, you can't walk through. They can only take you to the doorway. Right. You have to open the door.
Right.
They can take you there, and there's a window on the door, and you can look in and be like, ooh. Mm-hmm. But if you just stop there, you will stand outside that door, banging on the door.
Yeah.
And it will never open for you.
Yeah.
You have the key within you. And I think that this is not just about plant medicine. Mm-hmm. You have the key within you. No guru. Mm-hmm. I got a guru. That just means I got a teacher that I really respect. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that I worship him and that he is the answer for me. He is not the key. I've got friends. I've had great lovers and experiences with partners that have helped me grow. I have success. I'm very comfortable in my life. I'm so blessed and so grateful for everything that I have. Mm-hmm. But none of it is the key to unlocking the door to infinite and eternal bliss, peace, truth. Mm-hmm. Those things can only be accessed within you. Mm-hmm. And nothing external is ever going to get you there. So whether it's plant medicine, psychedelic, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a bunch of money, it helps.
We do a good job of substituting that in the place of what it is that we're really looking for. But, my strongest experience on plant medicine was really just coming home to the fact that the unconditional love, the true love, it's within. We go looking for all these things just to come home to that. That's the bottom line. We're looking for the love. That's it. That's the big mystery, And sorry guys, that's what it's all about, It's about the love. It's always about the love.
I mean, in the Beatles and all the psychedelics they took, and I've meditated in there's the Maharishi ashram in Rishikesh, which was the famous ashram that it's called the Beatles ashram as well, and known as that.
Pictures.
Yeah, and it's so cool. But there's these little pods, meditation pods that they meditated in, and they came up with the music of, some of their most famous bodies of work.
Right.
And you go inside of there, and it's an altered state to chant in there, and the echoes, and they were using both psychedelics and they were using meditation and yogic practices. Mm-hmm. And what was the message of all that body of work? Mm-hmm. Love, love, love. Love is all there is.
Yeah. There we go. There's a podcast. Wrapped up.
Altered state. Love is all there is. I am committed to continuing on this journey, and I'm really grateful that I've opened my heart again to receiving the wisdom, the magic, and the love that are provided through plant medicines. I'm grateful that I have transcended that judgment that was actually coming from my own trauma with working with it. On that note, I teach practices that are about taking people to altered states through breath work and through kriyas and working with Kundalini energy. And I'm going to be hosting this event coming up on November 15th, Altered State. It's called Altered State. Which, you were just kept saying it, so I was like, this is great. I'm going to make sure I air this before the Altered State event.
perfect timing.
Thank you.
And really, as we've been saying throughout, altered states are super fucking helpful.
Yeah.
Super fucking helpful. You know, once again, if you're gonna get there, you can get there fast. You know, it's just the rest of it.
And I love the idea of taking people through a peak experience. I'm gonna have, you know, a peak experience that I'm creating at this event. I'm gonna have this musical
killer music.
Yes, Liquid Bloom blessing us with his medicine music and taking people through breath work and partner work and dance, and it's gonna be a peak experience like you would experience on drugs, because peak experiences are fucking fun, number one. And because those peak experiences are what peaks, you know I love a good pun. It's what peaks are, experience to go further and to go deeper. So it in some lifetimes, I'm sure that we've both been like, you know, the old crone in the woods, and I've been the like, you know, meditator in the cave, the sadhu in the cave, just meditating, you know, and like that was it. Yeah. We are these fabulous goddesses that we have become in this life, and you know, peak experiences are available to us. Born in America, like, there's certain reasons that we've come into this certain lifetime, and we've had a lot of peak experiences, and now we get to share them with others as well, and to guide and to be a source of wisdom and inspiration for others to have those experiences and then also integrate them. And we both have discovered paths and ways to integrate and also to channel. You know, I've been channeling a lot of the work I've done into the ways that I'm sharing with the world, and I've been in a really beautiful creative flow. And I'd love for you to share as well, you know, the ways in which you're sharing and inspiring others.
Thank you for giving me room to shamelessly plug.
Shamelessly plug away, please.
Well, first of all, definitely go check out her offering. It's the 15th.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, that's gonna be like definitely once in a lifetime amazing situation. I wish I could make it.
You're in spirit.
I will. Beyond that, if you want an astrology reading, you can check out my site at arachnereadings.com. If you are also more interested in my artistic offerings,
Art is medicine.
Thank you. Yeah, my art, which is actually the product of a lot of the work that I've done over the years, both with medicines, with altered states, with the other shamanic work that I have done. I offer shamanic spirit portraits on my website, where I will connect with you on a soul-to-soul level, and I will do a ceremony to connect with your soul and to speak with your guides and download an image and then paint that image of your soul. And it's some of my favorite work to do. I've had the pleasure of doing a bunch of them this year. Just keep them coming. Just let me paint your soul. That's all I want to do.
She painted my soul, and it's a serpent.
Oh, that's just the beginning. We'll do another one at some point. Please. Multiple paintings coming. But my website is adriannetamararachne.com for my artwork. Guess we could put like Facebook and Instagram links on there. Cool, awesome. I think that's about it for right now. Yeah, it's the main stuff.
And we're always evolving and growing, and are both like two healer creatives who infuse creativity into healing offerings. And so just you're a part of our community now. If you're listening to this podcast, if you're watching this YouTube video, you can find us and connect with us. And we're here to contribute to the rise of the collective in all the ways